Hey there, meteorologist Danielle Moss with a update for you as far as our weather is concerned. Oh, let's make sure that we are in the right mode here. For you, we do have a bit of a concern about some potential for flooding that we are addressing, especially into northwest Georgia. So let's talk a little bit about it. What are we looking at? What are we seeing on the radar? And what can we expect? I know a lot of people are on edge when we talk about flooding. Here lately, we have been seeing tons of flooding across the southeast, and it's been dangerous. And I will say, I'm going to read you some of the bulletins that I've been watching in portions of northwest Georgia that's just right outside of our viewing area in Whitefield County. Multiple reports of heavy rainfall. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and pull this up so that we can talk a little bit about what's happening in Whitefield County right now. According to their emergency manager, there's heavy flooding near their airport, Willowdale and Chattooga, which is one of those roads that is in the area, is flooded to the windows. A lot of people that are saying that vehicles are unable to pass on some certain roads. Southbound lane flooded on Doug Gap Road, which is a very prominent road there in Whitefield County. There's a transformer and lines down in several places, trees down on Sugart Road, which is another very prominent street there in Whitefield County. One thing that we are watching in our DMA is Floyd County and Chattooga counties as far as their flooding threat is concerned. Here's a look at our current satellite and radar. In fact, let's go ahead and zoom on in. What are we looking at right now? We don't have an alert. However, we do want to make sure that you are aware, especially if you know anyone that lives in northwest Georgia. Really, it stretches from northwest Georgia all the way back into Cleburne and Randolph counties in our Alabama counties. And I know if you're living in Metro Atlanta, you're like, it's just been gloomy all day long here. We haven't really gotten any significant rainfall. But what's happening is we're starting to see this front just kind of stall out. And that has increased the flooding threat for overnight tonight and into your Sunday. This one pocket of northwest Georgia has been getting plenty of rainfall over the last really 2 or 3 hours. And as you take a closer look here in Metro Atlanta, it's mostly dry. We're just looking at really just cloud cover around Metro Atlanta. And even as you take a look into our tower camera this evening, we're not seeing any kind of rainfall at all. This is the portion, though, that I want to make sure that we are bringing your attention to on our radar. That is in the far northwest Georgia corridor. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here and bring my attention to what's happening. Somerville, we have definitely been seeing some heavy rainfall there pretty much all week long. In fact, I received a video from a viewer really on Friday that showed the rainfall there on Thursday and how bad it flooded. So this situation has been an ongoing situation, something the National Weather Service is aware of. And whenever we see a stalled out front and increased rain chances, increased flooding chances, that's another reason why we wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of what's going on. Let's check out another traffic camera. This is our Blue Ridge camera. You can see there on the streets. I don't know if you guys can see it there, but the water is literally just draining down this hill there. That's how much rain they have gotten. And even though we're not looking at heavy rain currently, you can see that this hill is literally doing its job and is trying to filter out some of that rainfall there. This is a look into our roam camera. It's very dark on this roam camera, so I'm sorry that it doesn't bring you a good depiction of what's actually happening there, but it is definitely wet. And as we talk about temperatures, that's not a concern. We're entering into this pattern where we're going to be cooler. A bigger concern right now is the flooding threat and what's happening in northwest Georgia. There are a few flood warnings that I do want to bring to your attention. The latest flood warning, there is one in 2 portions. One is for Chattooga County, and it's also for Floyd County. You can see there in Rome. That is the latest one. And let me bring up the bulletin so we can make sure that we are on the same page of when it expires at 12:45 a.m. And just for reference, it's 10:20 p.m. You can see the time there in the top corner. This flood warning expires at 12:45 a.m. and it is for Chattooga, South Central Chattooga, and Central Floyd counties in northwestern Georgia. It does include Rome, Coosa, Holland, and Armuchee. So a lot of places that we've been seeing a lot of flooding concerns over the last few weeks. So another reason why we want to make sure that you are, paying close attention there. The first flash flood warning that was issued was for Whitefield and Murray counties. That's this box here right where Dalton is, and that's where we were talking about the reports of the flooding, water up to windows, cars being unable to pass. Once again, that is in Whitefield County. So Dalton, Chatsworth, Tunnel Hill, Tilton, Donville, Mill Creek, Rocky Face, all and the North Georgia Speedway are the most impacted areas right now from that flash flood warning. And that warning, that expires at 11:45 p.m. They have not expanded it. Just like with normal severe weather, if they feel the need, they can either cancel it early or they can extend it past wherever they need to. Now, this is also very interesting. We've been talking about Northwest Georgia, but there's also a flood watch in effect for also Cleburne and Randolph counties, and that is until tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. So Northwest Georgia is not the only place that's concerned about this flooding. It also extends back into Birmingham and portions of Alabama as well. So let's time it out for you. What can we expect? What's going to happen? What are we concerned about? This is look at our latest forecast track. This is honestly a model that we don't use very often, but I like the way that it kind of populates and the way that it looks like on our radar. When we're talking about an exact kind of, what we're comparing our radar to, what our forecast track is, this model is showing me that it's probably one of the best models that we should be paying attention to for this overnight event right now. Now, as you can see, this is for Sunday at 12:30 a.m. That rainfall is still over that same northwest corridor. Now, it does sink down just a little bit into portions of Metro Atlanta. You can see Marietta there, a little bit wet. Obviously, portions of Cobb County, maybe a little bit of Fulton County, maybe some isolated showers across the metro. But our main concern right now, as far as flooding is concerned, it's going to continue to be that northwest Georgia corridor. Now, as I put into motion, this is 3 a.m. on Sunday. Unfortunately, that rainfall, it slacks up, but it does not stop. That's at 3 a.m. and that continues once again to 5:30 a.m. and Rome definitely still under that flash flood warning. It will expire, but the National Weather Service, they'll assess. They have multiple models just like we do. They can extend the warning or they can issue a flood watch just like our Birmingham office did. Now, this is a look at Sunday at 9 a.m. A lot of people have Sunday plans, whether you're going to church, whether you're going to brunch, whether you're trying to figure out what to do or just enjoying your day off, your last day off before you go back into work. And, teachers are trying to enjoy their last weekend before they got to go back into school on Monday. It does look like we start to see some of that rain taper off just a little bit by Sunday at 9 a.m. By 1 p.m., mostly cloudy skies. Most of us are dry, other than a little bit of rainfall there in East Georgia near Athens. Still same weather story as we head throughout your Sunday. Sunday honestly looks like one of those days where you just want to keep your rain gear handy. The flooding threat in Northwest Georgia will be over by Sunday morning, at least by really 8 or 9 a.m. I could see it kind of being scaled back before then. This was one of the maps that I showed today during our 6 p.m. show. The flood risk for Saturday. Another map that we don't really show very often because it can get a little bit confusing. So it's literally the same thing from the Storm Prediction Center when we talk about severe weather. This one is just specifically for flooding. There is a slight risk in that North Georgia corridor where you're seeing that rainfall. And that's what really alerted me to say, okay, let's make sure that we're paying close attention to the forecast today because there is a slight risk for some flooding. Now, this is the normal model that we usually look at. One of the models that, are showing that the rainfall could stop a little bit earlier, which is great news. But if you're in Northwest Georgia, I would definitely say weather aware going really from right now all the way until at least 2 a.m. Let's see, I just got a new notification from one of our weather service officers, and I just want to make sure that we are relaying the latest information here. Okay, so they just issued a flash flood warning with a considerable threat for Cleburne, Alabama. So let's go back to our radar right now. Okay, and I'm going to make sure our watches and warnings are on. Sorry for the dead space. I know it got quiet, but I want to make sure that I have all my watches and warnings on, because this is definitely, this is concerning now. Okay. Okay, so this is the latest flash flood warning that they were in. Akila, I know that you're listening to me. Can you send out an alert for that? This is a flash flood warning for Cleburne, Alabama, and it is considerable. Once again, if you all are listening to in the back, we need to send out a push notification about this. This is a flash flood warning for Cleburne County, Alabama, and it's until 12:30 a.m. And I will post this information in Teams, hopefully. Okay, thank you. This is real-time updates. This is live streaming. You guys get to see what's happening behind the scenes. It's not a severe thunderstorm warning, right? But whenever there is a considerable tag, that is something that we want to take very, very seriously. So I'm going to make sure that we relay this information to our newsroom in a timely fashion. So just give me 1 second here. And we are going to go on at 11 p.m. So that will definitely help. Flash flood warning for Cleburne. Okay. Okay, so let's get this information on here so that we can want to make sure that you guys can see this on your screens at home. There we go. Okay, it is until 12:45 a.m. and I'll read the bulletin out loud so that we can all be on the same page. Once again, this is a flash flood warning for Chattooga and Floyd County until 12:45 a.m. and it is for considerable. Flash flooding will impact creeks and streams, urban highways, streets, underpasses as well for Rome, Coosa, Holland, and Armuchee. But that is for, they have lumped this together. So let me do another query on this screen so that we can get the latest on this one in Cleburne, Alabama. There it is. There it is. Cleburne, Calhoun, Cherokee. Okay. Here we go. Flash flood warning, northeastern Calhoun County and east central Alabama, as well as northeastern Cleburne and southeastern Cherokee County until 12:30 a.m. This is Doppler radar indicated thunderstorms producing heavy rain. Between 1 and 3 inches of rain have fallen, and additional rainfall amounts up to 3 inches are possible in the warned area. Life-threatening flash flooding and thunderstorms producing flash flooding are definitely possible. Once again, this is for creeks, streams, urban areas, highways, streets, and underpasses. Hey, Akilo, just a quick question. I don't know if you can just answer in my ear. Is there a way for us to stream this on Facebook as well so that we can make sure that we're getting this latest information out to people? Because this is also going to be where Jacksonville State is located as well, because it's also in Calhoun County. And it does include Piedmont, Alabama, and some pretty large residential areas there. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Okay, once again, so the locations that will experience this flash flooding, they are saying Piedmont, Forney, Pleasant Gap, Eastern Weiss Lake, Spring Garden, Borden, Springs and Waterhouse. So if you are watching, Akila did tell me that we are live on YouTube. So if you're watching right now on YouTube, just make sure that people are aware. Once again, Calhoun, Cherokee, and Cleburne counties in Alabama. This is a brand new flash flood warning, and it is it has a special tag on it. This isn't just a normal flash flood warning. This is one that the National Weather Service in Birmingham, they are a little bit concerned about. And rightfully so. So they have a considerable tag on this storm, and you want to make sure that you are taking this one very, very seriously. The problem is it's also very late at night. It's 10:31 p.m. A lot of people could be laying down trying to go to sleep. In fact, I'm going to take this radar off for just 1 second so that you guys can see exactly where this warning is located, and I'll zoom out just a little bit. And I know that there's two overlapping warnings. So this is the first one that I was telling you about that includes Floyd County as well, and then portions of Chattooga, a very small portion of Chattooga County. But this one considers, it also includes our Cherokee and Cleburne counties in Alabama, as well as Calhoun County, which is right here where Center and Piedmont is located. So technically, I know it gets very, very confusing. So this is where Calhoun County is, or Piedmont is. Jacksonville State is back a little bit, so that is not in the warning. However, Piedmont, Alabama is, and I do know that there's a lot of people that live in Piedmont, and I'll bring that up just a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. So two overlapping warnings causing some considerable flooding threats in that area. I have not seen any emergency manager posts of any flooding reports or anything that people should be concerned about just yet, but the rainfall rates, that is why they are concerned. So I'm going to put the radar back on so that we can, I want the radar drape. And then we'll zoom out just a little bit here and look at the rainfall totals. There we go. So this is 24-hour rainfall totals, and I don't want you to get caught up in this number because this is really just over the last few hours. And if we do a query in some of these places, I'm sure that that is exactly why they have put some of these flood warnings out. So we're going to query this big orange spot. That's 5 inches of rain there, 3.8 there. Going back towards Jacksonville, that is 2.2, 2.6, 1.5, and 3.1. So what you're seeing is some of the rainfall rates that have fallen very, very recently. So as of right now, honestly, where you see that bright orange, that is where the heaviest of the rainfall has fallen. That's 5 inches of rain in the last 24 hours. That's a lot of rainfall with nowhere to go. 3.8 inches of rain, and then even 2.5 inches of rain. This is exactly where we were concerned about that flooding threat to continue to take place. And like I said, that rainfall is not going to be completed until at least 1 or 2 a.m. The earliest model that we're seeing for it to be over is around 1 or 2 a.m. This is another look at that flood watch. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more counties extended or implemented into this flood watch. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and ask them if they're going to add some counties into the flood watch just to be preemptive. And Floyd County emergency manager literally just said 5 inches of rain reported fallen since 7 p.m. in western Floyd on Morton Bend Road. So I'm going to also put this in our chat, Akila, so that we can try to find out some more information from our desk about it. You're welcome. Are you all thinking of? This is real time. This is what we do. We communicate with the National Weather Service. What I'm doing right now is I'm going to ask them if they're thinking of adding additional counties or issuing a flood watch. Okay. That has been asked. Let me come over here. And then Peachtree City. Also, Akila, I'm probably going to get off of this in about 10 minutes so that we can regroup. But if you can ask Brea if there's any way that we can try to reach out to Floyd County emergency managers, maybe we can do some kind of interview on broadcast about what's happening there. Thank you. Okay. All right. Let's get back to the radar here. Okay. So here's another look at our Northwest Georgia corridor, and I'll zoom out just a little bit so we can include our Alabama counties. Still a lot of heavy rainfall here, and it's not really slacking up just yet. If I pull up our latest forecast track, it's 1036. It has not. This is the model that I was telling you about that I think is doing the best as far as picking up on that heavy rainfall right now. If I drag it through, we start to see that rain kind of just dispersing just a little bit. It's not as heavy. This is at 1 a.m., but still any kind of lingering rain, when we're talking about Floyd County have gotten at least 5 inches already in the last 7 hours, that's still very concerning. What you're going to want to see is complete stoppage of rain. And unfortunately, this model does keep rain into Rome, into Floyd County, at least until 5 a.m. right now. So that's something else that we'll have to continue to watch. I keep checking my phone because I'm continuing to check some of these groups. Okay, we have an update from the National Weather Service. They did respond to me. They are not planning on a flood watch at this time. We're expecting a fairly localized and short-term threat over the next few hours in far west and northwest Georgia. Okay. So even though they have these flash flood warnings, they're not going to be issuing a watch as of right now. Obviously, things could change, but as of right now, they're not thinking they're going to be issuing a watch. So then as you head into your Sunday morning at 7 a.m., this model kind of has it ceasing. So that's why I said any time between 1 a.m. and really 4 a.m., we'll start to see it slowing up. But as of right now, it's still an active threat. This is a look at our secondary model. This model has the rainfall completely ending by 2 a.m. And I'm thinking that this is probably the model that the National Weather Service is probably leaning on a little bit more, a model that has that rainfall tapering off, which would be awesome. I really hope that that is definitely the case. But if not, worst case scenario, the rainfall doesn't stop until around 5 a.m. As of right now, Northwest Georgia is definitely getting the worst of the rain. And then as we go into our flood warnings, you can see that newest flood warning has been added. I'm going to move this up just a little bit so that we can get a better look on. There we go. I want to keep the Whitefield County one in there. I know this is not in our viewing area, but I think it does tell a pretty telling story of how the rainfall stretches all the way back from literally Northwest Georgia all the way back into Alabama. And you can see that's a brand new flash flood warning on the other side of Jacksonville, Alabama. That's where Jacksonville State is. That's where I have one of my degrees from. That's why I'm so familiar with this area here. This newest considerable flash flood warning has been issued, and that does go into the overnight hours, so at least for another 2 hours or so. So definitely make sure that you are, paying close attention to the forecast. Before you go to sleep tonight, the biggest thing that I can tell you is to make sure that you have your alerts turned on your phone. Whenever there is a flash flood warning that is issued that has that considerable tagged, just like what you just saw that was issued for Cleburne counties, you want to make sure that you have those notifications turned on. That's going to wake you up out of your seat if you have no weather radio. I really hope that you have a weather radio if you live in Northwest Georgia, just so that you can stay up to date with the latest forecast. Whenever there's a watch or a warning that is issued, the weather radio is obviously going to go off. However, if you're a heavy sleeper, I sleep very heavy. So if you sleep through multiple alarms, having multiple ways to get notifications, that's going to be waking you up to make sure that you get to higher ground. As of right now, with this considerable tag, the only thing that they are saying is that life-threatening flash flooding of creeks, streams, and urban areas such as highways and streets are possible. They're just saying, turn around, don't drown. So we're not seeing any reports of anything that is visually, this is all radar indicated. So that's another reason why they're not making it a huge deal. It is radar indicated. However, like what we've seen, like what the emergency manager reported, we've gotten at least 5 inches of rain in 7 hours in Floyd County alone. And this rainfall is not done yet, at least until 2 a.m. So just make sure that you're staying up to date with the forecast. It's 10:41 p.m. right now. We're going to get ready for our 11 p.m. newscast. As of right now, this is the latest of what's happening. This flooding threat in northwest Georgia, you can see over the last 2 hours or so, it has increased. Heavy rainfall just stalling out over northwest Georgia, bringing a larger flooding concern for the overnight hours for anyone that is in northwest Georgia, stretching all the way back into portions of Alabama. There is a flood watch in effect for portions of Alabama as well. So just make sure you have your phone charged. Make sure that you have those notifications on, just in case there is a flash flood warning issued for your location. And you want to make sure that you are safe overnight and you can sleep a little bit better knowing that your phone at the very least is going to be waking you up. Make sure that you have also your weather radio in tow so that you are prepared. For now, I'm going to turn you back to our radar loops. We're going to keep our radar loops going for the rest of this weekend, so you don't have to worry about anything other than just the radar loops. Some of those maps that I'm going to be continuing to update that has those flood warnings, the flood watches as well. So if you do get a little bit nervous overnight and you don't see us, we're always here. We're always going to be on. This is a 24/7 stream on the 11 Alive Plus. If you're watching us on YouTube, download 11 Alive Plus so that you have that at your fingertips. That's another great way for you to get notifications. You can turn them on for location specific, and that app will send you a notification. And if I'm live streaming again, we will send out a notification so that you all are updated on the latest. The one warning that we are most concerned about is that flash flood warning for Calhoun County, Cleburne County, and Cherokee counties in Alabama. And it is radar indicated. Not hearing of any reports, but we'll keep our eye on it. We'll keep monitoring things, and we'll bring you the latest at 11 p.m. on 11 Alive. So go ahead and make sure you download that 11 Alive Plus app so that you can have the latest right on your fingertips.